We had a theory at the time that one of the most valuable commodities was going to be data.
The world's most valuable commodity, the resource in question, personal data.
And that people were going to buy more data because they're going to become much more data oriented. It's going to become easier for them to buy data. Fast forward today, there are more companies buying data today than there were back then. OpenAI buys a lot of data. Anthropic buys a lot of data. Google spent a lot of money on the Reddit data.
And OpenAI paid New York Times.
They did. And I think there was something for the data, but probably it was a bribe to get them to say nice things about them. $20 million for like incredible press about you. That's a good deal.
Have you come up with a new theory about the next 10 years?
The one thing I'm more confident on in the world of AI is that things like community of people is going to become even more important. Watching your football game with friends is so much better than watching a football game alone.
Auren, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for taking out the time.
Of course.
You hosted Dorkesh a while back, and you guys were debating whether you should do guest bios. I am heavily inclined towards doing guest bios.
You are?
I am.
Why?
I think, so I'm trying to come up with the archetype of successful founders, and I think their personal journeys matter because you can use those stories to inspire the next generation of builders. And also it helps you sort of draw a pattern about what happened in their early life or what was a transformational experience that shaped them. I find it interesting.
It's interesting, but do you actually think there's an archetype?
I think if I collect enough stories, I might be able to come up with one.
Yeah, my guess is there isn't.
Your guess is that each of them looks different?
Yeah, each success is a success in its own way.
Right.
And that, if you had to map out, I don't know, the 300 traits that matter in an entrepreneur, maybe there's one trait that's somewhat common, which might be persistence. And then the next trait might be 25% of them have, and then start dropping from there. Yeah, I don't know that there's like super common traits that they have.
Oh, interesting. Well, we'll still get into it.
Yeah.
So tell me more about where did you grow up and what did your parents do? Were they entrepreneurs? How did you catch that bug?
No, not really. No, my parents were like kind of, we always had money troubles growing up. And so grew up in random suburb in New York. And so, probably, so money was like something we like thought about. And then, but I was always inspired by like entrepreneurial stories growing up, and started a business in junior high school, which ended up being like, for at least that era, very somewhat successful. And then started another business in 9th grade, which ended up paying for my college.
Who were like the entrepreneurs at the time that inspired you, and how did you discover them?
At the time it was, often they had these like kids magazines in elementary school and junior high school and high school. Right. And they would often like profile some kid. It was usually some kid who ended up like getting like, all these, was able to get all these computer games for free because he built a business or something. And so those were kind of somewhat inspiring. And I actually got into like baseball cards, but I didn't get into baseball cards because I was into baseball. I got into baseball cards because I thought like it might be fun money. I got into baseball because I got into baseball cards. And then later started like a household chore company, kind of like a temp firm for high school students. And that made enough money to pay for most of my college.
Do you think in hindsight college was beneficial?
I think college was super fun, and I learned a lot about myself in college. Yeah. So, did I learn a lot in the classroom? I wouldn't say I learned a lot in the classroom, but I made some really great friendships. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot about myself. I changed a lot in college as well, like a lot of people do. Now, could I have learned that going to the military, doing many other things, probably, or getting a job, potentially? It would have been a slightly different experience. College is very carefree. And then for me, it was very carefree because I didn't have to get a job my first 3 years because I was able to pay for it through my work. And so I didn't actually have to work. So I could actually have fun. I could drink beer. I could do other things you're supposed to do in college. And so, yeah, and it was great. And I never cared about my grades, which was also great. So I think for people who care about their grades, I got a C- on one of my math classes. And I used to think I was pretty good at math, and I was mostly just like drinking and not caring about it. But still became an engineer, even in spite of that.
What kind of engineering did you?
I did what was then called industrial engineering and operations research. Today they might call it like data science or something. And
Interesting.
So it's mostly math, statistics, probability, some software, but you had to do like all the core engineering stuff.
At the time, electrical or computer science would have been more popular to take up, right? So what was the decision that went into choosing that?
Yeah, it was well, I didn't really know that much about computers when I was in high school.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I didn't have a computer, and we couldn't afford one. So, I mean, I used like the computers in the school for like desktop publishing and things like that. And I was like, for the high school newspaper and things, but I never knew anything about programming or anything like that. And so I didn't kind of come in thinking I would want to do something with computers. I just liked math. And I liked a lot of other subjects like history and stuff, but I thought those were pretty easy to teach yourself. But things like engineering, physics, things like that, I thought were more difficult for me to teach myself.
So those 4 years were exploration time for you, in a way.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and we ended up running out of money at the end of my junior year. I misbudgeted junior year of college, so I started an internet company because that's what I knew to do to pay for my last year of college.
What was that company?
We did consulting. So we basically built like corporate intranets, and then it would end up being successful enough to pay for my last year of college and do a few other things with it, and it was really cool. I started with a buddy of mine.
Was entrepreneurship always driven from the need to make money for you in the early days?
I don't really think so. I think it was because I think there's lots of better ways to make money per se. I think it was more, there's certain types of personalities that are less employable. So I worked at a frozen yogurt store after 8th grade, the summer of after 8th grade. And I thought I was the most best employee of the frozen yogurt store. I was very high on myself. I was by far the youngest person who worked there.
Did they also think that?
Well, so then there was a point where they decided to promote some people to become assistant manager, and I wasn't one of the people promoted, and I quit because of it. Because I was confident that I was the best person and should have been promoted. So, there's just people who are just not always that situated and suited to be a good employee.
Why do you think you weren't promoted?
Well, I was by far the youngest, and the owner of the store, who was a relatively young guy, a very nice guy, he sat me down and he said, look, if I promote you, other people are going to quit because you can't really be their boss because you're like 3 years younger than them. And by the way, even though I was 14, I probably looked like I was 12 or 11. And so, this is just like not, it just wouldn't work, which, he's probably right. Yeah. But I was like, well, I'm the most qualified. I'm the best. I do all the job. I make yogurt really well. I was the only one who was entrusted to a key to the store. So I'd come in early. I would set everything up and everything. Yeah. So I was like, you're entrusting me with the key. You're not even trusting your assistant managers with the key.
Do you think age and experience matter?
Experience is certainly helpful.
Right.
But it also could have you unlearn things that aren't that helpful. Yeah. And experienced people have often some sort of entitlement. They don't want to do certain things that are hard to do, or they don't want to work certain hours. They don't want to do other types of stuff. They've already done it, right? I've already done that. I don't want to do that again, right? So sometimes they can be really valuable, but also sometimes they can be, their skills are overrated. And if things are changing fast, their skills are very overrated.
I'll come back to this, the hiding and identifying talent part, because I think I was talking to Rafi and he mentioned you've been exceptional at succession planning. And I want to understand what that takes.
I wouldn't say I'm exceptional at any of those types of things. So yeah, I
even reading your blog post on spinouts actually helped me understand you. I think you're being humble about it, but you have been good at knowing when to pass on the torch to people who might be more suited to doing.
Yeah, I mean, certain types of people are. One of the things, if you just happen to find someone who's an exceptional person, it would be good for you to try to work with that person as long as you can. And so I think a lot of times, especially exceptional people who you found, because you found them, probably means they're younger and somewhat undiscovered. And over time, if you work with them, other people will realize they're exceptional, and other people will also want to work with those people. And so the way to work with that person for longer is to make sure, usually exceptional people are optimizing for growth and they want to grow faster. And so you want to make sure that this exceptional person is increasing in their growth. And if you can help them do that, then they'll stay with you for as long as they're growing very fast. And so one of the ways that you can do that is by giving them more responsibility. That usually is a way to accelerate your growth, is by increasing the rate of the chance that you're going to fail.
Right.
So if you join, McKinsey as a 23-year-old, like your chance of failing is close to zero. It's rounding down to zero, right? They've set up all the guardrails to make sure you can't really fail. So it's going to be harder to grow in a situation like that. Even if you're an exceptional person, you're going to have to really do a whole bunch of things, because part of growth is trying things that are hard where your chance of success isn't super high. And so you want to be able to give people more responsibility over time so they have a relatively high rate of failure. And you don't want to have like a 98% chance of failure or something, but somewhere between, let's say, 1/3 to 2/3 chance of failure is like the optimal point.
This is for exceptional talent within a company, or just any young talent?
Anyone who wants to optimize for growth, which I think should be most people, but anyone who wants to optimize for growth needs to have a relatively high failure rate.
2/3. How did you come up with that number?
I think somewhere between 1/3 and 2/3 is like the right, in that bound is a good, and it's always hard to know what the failure rate is, a priority, right? But most jobs is probably like under 10%. So it's usually you're not putting someone in a position where they're going to have like a massively high failure rate or something, right? Most jobs are like the opposite. They give you way more scaffolding. They do lots of other things. They make it really hard. There's lots of bureaucracy. There's lots of other types of things that are out there. So if you can just give somebody a little bit more, a little more autonomy, but also just a little bit more area where they can work under the curve that they can work under that they weren't having before.
That's super interesting. With Ben, and you wrote a blog post that you debated this with Ben Kasnoka on your podcast, what you know matters more now. And then you wrote that blog post about 4 or 5 years ago, if I'm not wrong. But you were thinking in the podcast, maybe you should update your sort of take on it. I think it's been a year since you hosted him. Have you changed your mind on it in the age of AI?
So just on if we take a step back, so there's this trope like who you know matters more than what you know, right? And people have been saying this all the time. Even when I was a kid, people would say this all the time. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think that was true in the 20th century. I actually don't think that was really true in the 1500s. I think it was what you knew was really important, and to survive and to thrive, et cetera. And then at some point it did become who you know. And if you think of the jobs that were the most important jobs in like the 1980s, they were kind of the who you know jobs. And the preeminent job in the 1980s was the investment banker. And the investment banker is essentially a who you know job. They basically put two what you knows together and they take a vig on the transaction. Right. So that is what investment. And then you have lots of other types of who you knows, the real estate broker, anybody like that was often a who you know that's out there. At some point, the preeminent jobs became what you know jobs. And so the investment banker morphed into, the hedge fund manager or something. And the hedge fund manager was definitely much more of a what you know than a who you know. Now, both are important. No one would say what you know is not important, otherwise you don't need to go to school at all, right? And who you know are important. The question is, where should one focus? What should they focus on, et cetera? And so at some point, let's say some point in the early 2000s, it switched, and what you knows, I believe, became more important than who you knows, partially because it was much more easy to discover the what you knows. So it used to be that what you knows were hidden, and then the internet came, and it was easier to figure out who was the preeminent, petroleum engineer or something, right? And then you can go find that person, and they could make more money, and they weren't. And so they started the what you knows, the salaries of the what you know started rising pretty dramatically. And even just engineers started getting paid more, right? So you have all these other kind of scenarios where, we see today the AI engineers getting paid all this stuff, right? These are clearly what you knows. They may not know anybody, but they're getting paid a lot because of what they know. So then there's a question of will AI change this? Because AI is good at what you knows. And then, so Ben had a belief that maybe AI is going to change this. I haven't thought about it enough to really know whether it is. I would say if I had to evaluate it today, I would say it's still better to be a what you know than a who you know. But it's hard to know 10 years from now. And like everything in AI, it's really hard to know anything. So I change my mind about everything AI related almost every week. So it's very hard to know all these types of things. By the way, who you knows is still important, and it's obviously still important in your life. I know my neighbor. And because I know my neighbor, I get invited over to dinner, and it's very nice. And if I didn't know my neighbor, I wouldn't get invited over, and I wouldn't have good interactions with them and their family. So that is very important for my life that I know them. And if I didn't know them, I wouldn't have this great, interaction with them. So who you know is really important, and it's
in social
important.
And professional life.
Any type of, if you just want to talk about any type of fulfillment, it is always important. But in your career, I think it is less important than it was in the 20th century.
What category would you put the venture capital job in?
I would say the venture capital job is probably largely a what you know, who you know job, not a what you know job.
Is it what investment banking was back in the 80s?
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah, that's probably right. And then, if you think of the venture capitalists versus the private equity person, well, the private equity people on average make at least 10 times as much as the venture capitalists, maybe 50 times more or something on average than the venture capitalists. And so, and they're definitely much more of a what you know than a who you know. So just go.
So the investment banking hedge fund sort of analogy is now like in the venture capitalist private equity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it's transferred.
Yeah, if you're a very good connector,
right,
it probably doesn't help you that much to be a private equity person. I mean, maybe still in fundraising it does, but it probably doesn't help you that much actually get returns.
Right.
Whereas in venture capital actually will help you get returns.
Right. So some jobs are still who you know, right?
Sure, for sure. Absolutely. And obviously there's still investment bankers, there's still real estate agents, there's still, lots of other things. But who you know is still important, almost every job.
Oh, every job. Yeah.
Still important.
100%.
It's just a question of the relative importance.
Yeah. When was the earliest you changed your mind about it? Because you started off doing businesses in 8th or 9th grade, right? And you're hearing in this entire time that who you know is like extremely important, and in that era probably still is.
Well, I don't know that I really ever thought about it.
Right.
Right. I didn't really ever think about any of these types of things. And lots of people give you lots of advice when you're growing up. And when you're a kid, you usually think most of it is, dumb or whatever. You don't really listen or you're not really, because it's some fuddy-duddy older person that's giving this advice.
You don't take
right.
seriously.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't really know. By the way, when I was a kid, I didn't know what a venture capitalist was or something, right? You don't know these types of things until later on.
On that, ever since college, how did you choose what ideas to pursue or what businesses to work on, put all your energy towards?
There's no rhyme or reason. I mean, sometimes I think people focus on things that are just interesting to them at the moment. It's not always like some sort of deep analysis of what, and certainly not an optimization function of what one should do. Some
people think very long and hard about it. And sometimes it's not that they're intentionally thinking about starting a company, right? But how do you, if you have optionality, how do you evaluate what is something that you should go all in on?
Well, sometimes people want to go just do it. Like they just want this to be a reality. And it doesn't have to be that big, right? It's like, what do you do in your life? Where do you go to dinner, right? You have thousands of options where you go to dinner, but you're like, I just want, a burger tonight or whatever, right? And then I want to try this new burger place or, whatever it is. Yeah. So it's people make decisions for lots of different reasons. And if you over-optimize everything, it just becomes very, very hard to go do. You don't, as you progress in your career, it is important that you think about it a little bit more, because as you progress in your career, you have many more options. Right. And so you don't want to end up in a local maxima where you're just doing the thing because it's presenting itself to you and it looks decent.
That's an interesting analogy. So you're tying fulfillment in a way to what you pursue.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't think you should be pursuing things that don't fulfill you. Right.
Of course.
And so you have a lot of different opportunities. And some of those things might be fulfilling you spiritually. Sometimes you're trying to do things that are better for society. Sometimes there's more personal reasons for doing or more selfish reasons. Usually there's some selfish reason, right, for doing it. And so you have to weigh those types of things. But if you weigh it too much, you're just not going to do anything interesting. So sometimes it's just going to just get started.
Yeah, I agree. So whatever that obsession might be, even if it's seemingly not the biggest thing you might work on in that moment, it doesn't matter. You just follow it because it fulfills you.
Yeah, it's very hard to know.
Yeah.
It's very hard to know what to do. But it's no one's life is optimized. No one is optimizing for anything. If you actually look at people, no one's actually optimizing for any one
No, in
thing.
hindsight becomes easier to map out, but in the moment, nobody is, right?
Even in hindsight, you can't really map it out. So no one is actually optimizing for anything.
You're right. Nobody's optimizing for it. Yeah.
You think Elon Musk is optimizing for taking over the world, but he spends half of his time playing video games. He literally is because he's and that relaxes him. It makes him happy, whatever. You would never play all these video games if that's all you want to do. But people are complex people. So even the most ambitious person you can think of, somebody like Elon Musk, they're complex people. They have social lives. They do other things. They like to have fun. They like to hang out with their friends. They're not no one is an optimization machine.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so given that, later on in your career, you get more optionality and you do have to be more mindful of the choices you make. How, walk me through the founding of Safegraph, because at that time you would have had probably more opportunities on the table, given the decent exit at LiveRamp.
Yeah, I think you just, sometimes you just end up doing something. You don't even know why.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I don't think that's just you're just working on something. It's kind of fun. You're working with some good people. You get into it. It's just one in front of another. Yeah. I don't think people always are super intentional about everything they do. And the question is just are you enjoying it? So is it fun at the moment? I think too many people, if you think of and I don't know if our audience can see this here, but there's kind of a there's kind of two different curves you can think about. So there's one curve where you start at the short term. So this would be time over here. So there's one curve where you start at the short term and then your long term. And so a lot of people, what they do in their life is they optimize for the midterm. They do everything possible to optimize for a midterm. So this is like, I don't really want to be a lawyer, but I'll go to law school, right? This would be someone, and well, that would give me some optionality, and I could, even though I don't really love the law, I'd go do it. And I don't like it. I don't really love all these things, et cetera. So there's a lot of people who are doing things. They think they're optimizing for longer, but they're really optimizing for the midterm. And they are doing what they're supposed to think they're supposed to be doing, which is like the marshmallow test. They're delaying gratification and not having a good time and not enjoying the short term. That, I think, is not a good strategy for one's career or one's life. It's very important that one actually has a good time and they like the short term. The short term is very important.
I
and
agree.
in some ways, they should do everything possible to under-optimize the midterm. Right. So they should like the short term, and then they should have some sort of eye on the long term. So the curve really should look more like a U, where you're really optimizing for the short term, you're not really sure what the midterm is, and then you have some sort of sense of the long term. So instead of going to, law school, you decide to start a commune in the middle of Africa or something, whatever.
Because that's something that interested you.
Yeah, whatever. You're like, I'm going to start a communist commune or something, whatever. Like, whatever it is that you're going to go do, and I'm going to have fun. And you learn a lot through that, and that like helps you end up, doing something else over there. Just doing what everyone else is doing things you don't think are good, but just look good to other people is, I think, problematic. And of course, we're all humans, so we all spend a lot of time doing things that for the benefit of what we think others will perceive us at. Right. So that is what humans do, but you want to have as little of that as possible.
So it's either make short-term decisions or with some sense of long-term, but never midterm decisions. Yeah,
midterm decisions are generally bad. And the classic person who's ambitious is generally making mostly midterm decisions.
What's another example where, you're making the short-term decision because it satisfies some immediate,
I mean, it could be when you're deciding what to do. You have a few different options, and one of us is like, well, I'm going to work with some really great people who I love working with. Right. I don't really know where it's going to go, and they're not paying me as much, or whatever. But it doesn't look as good as my resume. But like that is probably a better decision. Like, I'm going to learn from them. It's interesting. It's fun.
You're going to have way more fun.
Yeah,
because of that.
Yeah, exactly. There's something that might come from that type of thing.
As long as you're not miserable, something will come of it.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, like, you're probably not going to be miserable on any of the options. Right. So, I mean, people are usually like today work is usually pretty good for most people, especially people who are like relatively ambitious, smart people. Like, you're going to get a job that is like, not, fine.
Pays decently.
And also like, with decent people and good colleagues. And so, so it's really a question on the margin of like, am I going to have more fun over here? Am I going to do something that's interesting? Are they going to push me more? Are they going to, if I want to work hard, are they going to work hard? Right. All these other types of things.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll take a picture of that graph and maybe post it. And
basically, I would say just don't do things just to build your resume.
Yeah.
So these are just generally things like if there's like, and that's really where probably the brand comes in. So eschewing the brand, like I would have the brand be worth less in your head.
Interesting. So Safegraph was just short-term project on that horizon or on that graph where, you were working with.
We had a theory about the world. And for some ways that theory really didn't turn out to be true. And we started something and then that led to 50 other things.
Can you tell the audience more about Safegraph?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Safegraph is just a data company. It sells data about physical places. And we had a theory at the time that, I think when you're starting a business, it's important to have a theory about the world that where the world is going that not necessarily, where most people, at least most smart people, don't think is true. So when we did LiveRamp, our theory was the number of vendors, technology vendors that a company would be growing dramatically. And at the time, most people thought that was not going to be the case. There was all these slides, these logo slides of all the different vendors that people had, and everyone was predicting consolidation. It's just too much. And we were thinking, no, it's going to grow at least another order of magnitude, maybe 2 more orders of magnitude. And because of that, you're going to need a way to integrate all these vendors. And so we got to do something that nobody else was doing because nobody believed in that vision. And then, we got lucky, or whatever, maybe not lucky, but our vision turned out to be correct.
Right.
In Safegraph, we believe that because the world was becoming much more data oriented, you had this rise of data scientists, you had all these other types of things, that the one of the most valuable commodities was going to be data. And that people were going to buy more data because they're going to become much more data oriented. It's going to become easier for them to buy data. And at the time, there wasn't a ton of companies buying raw data. And so we thought, okay, let's start a bunch of data companies. Let's invest in a bunch of data companies. That theory turned out not to really be that true. So I would say today, fast forward today, there are more companies buying data today than there were back then. So let's say more today than there were 5 years ago, but there's not that much more. So it really hasn't grown at the rate that I would have thought. Now, some people say, oh, you're still early, and that could still happen. Maybe that will, I'm not sure. But I would say the bet we made turn out not to be correct.
May turn out not to be correct.
It has so far turned out not to be correct. And so I would have thought by now it would have grown an order of magnitude.
Right.
And it's grown very small, very slight. In some industries, it's actually shrunk. So like the number of hedge funds, I would say when we were starting, there was about 100 hedge funds that were serious buyers of data. And today it's probably 60. It's actually gone down. So so in some areas actually is worse.
What is leading to the demand getting going down, I guess?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of different theories as to why. And on the hedge fund side, that it was just either too expensive or they weren't. A lot of hedge funds suffered in general. So some of those funds may have blown up. And then, some of the ones that are doing extraordinarily well, maybe ate the others or something, right? You have the classic ones that buy data like Renaissance and Citadel and Point72, right? And you have these other kind of guys that are out there. Those guys are still buying tons of data. Yeah. But even some of the biggest hedge funds in the world, the Bridgewaters of the world, Bridgewater basically almost buys no data. So you have these like huge funds that are hundreds of billions of dollars of AUM and basically don't buy anything. I mean, they buy like stuff you could put in Excel, but nothing serious.
But the other side of this is that in the age of AI, you're almost, at the right time.
Maybe, but the number of buyers is still small.
It's like the biggest AI labs.
OpenAI buys a lot of data. Anthropic buys a lot of data. Meta
buys entire companies.
I don't think Meta buys that much data. I mean, they buy some, but not given their scale yet. Maybe they'll start now.
They bought Scale AI.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of for the data, maybe, right? So maybe, but I don't think so. I think they bought Scale AI for the people. Yeah.
You think it's not for the data?
I don't think so, because they're not. It's not like they're making it's not like they're saying no one else could buy the data. No. Everyone can still buy Scale's data.
Fair.
Right. So if the data was that valuable, so I don't know. So I don't think they're as big of a buyer as OpenAI, and they're obviously a much bigger company. Right. And I don't think they're. And then Google bought some data from Reddit or from some of the other places, but we will see. I guess so there's not that many buyers there. There are some, and so I'm glad the number of buyers has gone up from these AI companies, and some of these AI companies do spend a lot of money on data. But also these AI companies might be very ephemeral, and so they might be buying that data today, but don't need it next year. So this might not be recurring revenue. And Google spent a lot of money on the Reddit data. That was a 2-year deal. We will see when that deal comes up for renewal,
Right.
what they're willing to spend on it. My guess is much, much, much less.
And OpenAI paid New York Times.
They did.
Yeah.
And I think there was something for the data, but probably it was a bribe to get them to say nice things about them. It was probably a very cheap way to get decent press. So in that case, I don't think the data is nearly that valuable, but the press might be way more valuable than that. So $20 million for like incredible press about you, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
But New York Times is a journalistic endeavor,
Right.
And you've got to pay for advertising, and that's a good way to go do it. So my guess is that's the reason they did it. And the New York Times, really, that is really not that valuable.
Have you come up with a new theory about, or are you in the process of coming up with a new theory about the next 10 years?
In the world of AI, it's very hard to know what is going to become valuable and what is not, and what one should do and what one shouldn't. The one thing I'm more confident on in the world of AI is that some things like community of people is going to become even more important. It's an area that is like an actually real personal connection, in-person personal connection, other types of personal connections where people really feel they have a community. Is going to be an important thing, at least for some people. There'll be some people where maybe they get their community from the AI or something.
I agree with you. Maybe it's going to be like these two different ends of the spectrum where, half the people have those AI meta friends, which they're very happy with, or the Grok, friends that they're very happy with. And the other half are like, we're going to completely detox. We're going to leave our...
Well, I don't know detox per se, because I still
not detox, but they would want these moments, these weekends where they're fully present and, they enjoy
and just like being with your family, having friends come over your house, coming over for pizza. There's one thing, it's like people like to watch a football game, but watching your football game with friends is so much better than watching a football game alone.
100%.
I mean, it's just like, it's not even 2 times better. It's like 2,000 times better.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And so, these things are just things I think people just have to kind of come to understand over time.
These are probably deeply human things.
Yeah, they're deeply human.
Yeah.
Now, creating businesses around that are not always that easy to do. In many cases, communities are like bad businesses to do. It's not like, I don't know, your church is not necessarily the best business in the world. I mean, in some cases they are pretty good businesses.
It's a great business.
Yeah, in some cases they are. So the question is, I'm spending much more time thinking about how do I do more stuff in community, not because these are great businesses, but because I think it's really good for humanity.
Right. Is that part of Dialog?
I think there's lots of things that are part of all these things. I think there's lots of different reasons for all these different things to exist. And, if you think of going to church or something, community's a piece of the bundle. It's not the only piece of the bundle. In fact, some of these churches today, the community is actually not as big as it used to be. So a lot of these churches are really big today. Yeah. Some of these churches are 30,000 plus people. You show up, you might not know anybody at the church, right? So it is, in some ways there's some spirituality. It's an entertainment. There's other types of things. Now, there might be a side thing where you have a Bible study or a side group or something where you get to, and because community is really about repeated interactions with people over long periods of time. That is what builds community. Having a one-time interaction with someone, it could be a start of something, but it doesn't build that community unless you're having true repeated interactions.
And then a church is that central place that repetitively brings people together.
Correct.
And there's some excuse. It could be Bible reading or something else.
Yeah. Right. Now, when you have a church of 200 people, you can know everybody, and it can be multi-generational. Everyone's kids, people's parents, etc. But when you have a church of 20,000 people, then you have to have subgroups within that if you really want to build communities.
you also have a community part to your podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We have a group for data leaders.
Data leaders, okay.
Yeah. So,
Tell me the origin story of the podcast. When did you start and why? And
again, no good reason, just like to do it. And so, and so some of these things, podcasts. So podcast is not it's for, except for a very small number of people, it's not a good business. And especially for our podcast is called World of DaaS, DaaS. There's no business. In fact, we don't even take advertising, right? So it's not a business at all. It's just kind of like, well, I wanted to go do it. Now I called it World of DaaS because I wanted to justify to myself that I was doing this for business and not just for my own personal fun, which is really what I'm doing it for.
Right.
But because of that, and so some of the podcast is about data, not all of it. And because of that, I ended up building a community, which is separate from the podcast. Actually, has really nothing to do with the podcast.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, which we call the World of DaaS community.
Okay. So it's also called the same. It has the same brand name.
Yeah, same brand name.
Yeah.
So we, you can use some of the same staff to help do it or something. Same domain.
Yeah.
And that is a community of data leaders where you have a very small number of people who really care about data, really have very deep questions about data, want to interact and talk to other people about data, want to potentially do business with other people. So it's this community mostly for CEOs or from key executives. They pay a yearly fee to be part of the community. There's an event almost every week that is sometimes can be very small, 6 people, 8 people kind of discussion about a very, very niche topic that only a very small number of people would actually care about. And so people self-select in, and then we get together as a group once a year and in person as well.
And these other leaders, are they gathering around these niche topics like every month or so? Or is it like
it's not, there's a coordinator. There's coordinators who coordinate these types of things. And so somebody will say, okay, I really want to talk about selling data to AI or something. How do you do it? How do you structure the deal? What do you do? Everyone knows this is often a one-time deal. Can I make it less than a one-time deal, or other ways to structure it? Can I understand it better? Can I get some of the learnings out of it? Can I get whatever? So they, raise your hand if you want to talk about, okay, there's 15 other people who want to talk about this. Let's have some discussion, and maybe just an hour. Okay, what's the best practices? What are you doing? Et cetera. It could be like that. It could be anything. And it could even be about something about hiring or something that is a little bit more across that many people would have a discussion on.
So the podcast has been sort of successful. It has 70,000, followers, subscribers on YouTube, and it has grown. Even though it didn't start out as a business.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest sort of benefits you've seen now that it has grown more?
I don't know. I mean, it's just fun.
Still to be seen. It's
just fun. Yes. I mean, again, I think people do things for lots of different reasons that are out there. And sometimes people continue to do things that they don't need to continue to do. But in this case, every week I enjoy it. And what I do think people should do, so I think everybody should do this, they should actually write down the core things that they're doing, and then maybe once a year or twice a year, look at those things and try to decide whether they should still do those things. And it could be really big things, do you still want to be married to this person or something, right? Do you still want to be in your job? Do you still want to live in your city where you're living in, et cetera, right? And it's actually really nice when you say yes, right? And then you realize, oh, actually, I love being married to this person, right? This is an incredible thing. I love this thing. I like where I'm living. This is I love this job, right? It's reaffirms what you want to do. I think it's a helpful thing. And then it could even be your views on topics or something. Have I changed my view on this? Obviously, and then other types of things do I still want to be part of this club, or do I still want to do this thing, or do I still want to play tennis every week with this guy, or whatever it might be, rather than just keep doing it because it's there. Now you can't reevaluate every day. That would be insane. And so, but once a year, twice a year, I think
5-6 key moments.
Maybe once a year is good enough.
I have another very close friend who does this, and you're probably the only second or third person I've heard this from who does this.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Huh. Very interesting. What are you've talked about community a lot. What's the secret to building a valuable and engaged community?
I don't really know.
We're still figuring it out.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to build. I mean, I think a community needs to be niche. So you need to have people that kind of believe something that is pretty rare and that they are aligned around that belief, and that brings them together for some sort of thing. If you're going to have like a robot, again, maybe if it's a different, but you need to have, and sometimes it's just a neighborhood community, everyone who lives on this block, right?
Yeah.
Except for that one guy who we hate, but everyone else who lives on this block.
Gathers around that one guy.
Yeah. And then partially it's also, we hate the guy who lives, in the corner because he yells at all of us every time we walk our dog, right? So that's actually, it's like good to have some enemies in a
some
community.
common,
some common enemy. And then then I think communities are like somewhat related cultures, and cultures are important to be niche. Like I think right now, a really great culture, if you want to start a company today, this is my advice to so I would start some sort of like thing that's going to appeal to like less than 1% of people, but really appeal to them. So my culture is my kind of culture idea, which I would never do, but this is my idea for someone else to go do, is like, we wear suits to work. We're a tech company.
Okay.
We wear suits to work. We use Windows. We don't use Mac, right? We have formal kind of planning meetings or something, right? Whatever. Like it's very, very formal. We clean our desks every day with Windex that's out there, right? We do calisthenics in the morning or something. Like just something like there's probably like 0.5% of people that would just love to work at that place.
Yeah.
And what I think what most people start doing is they start making compromises in their community because they want to bring in extra people or they want to go do things. And that is really what kills it, because they try to be like all things to all people.
Yeah, that's fair. As we were talking about community, you've written another interesting blog on insiders versus outsiders. I read it the first time you posted it. I think it's called Naval versus Nirav, right? Can you share more for the audience who might not know?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a question of, there's lots of ways to be successful, and there's lots of different archetypes of people who are successful, and some people are more the outsider and some people are more the insider. And some people are more the insider internally who wants to be the outsider. Some people are the outsider internally who wants to be the insider. Usually there's some sort of tension there. And then some people even can switch. It's hard, but some people switch between them. And so in this particular case, I talked about two people who I know, who I think highly of, one of which is more the consummate insider, one of which is more the consummate outsider. And they've both been incredibly successful people. In fact, they both kind of used to work together with one another and had some tension with one another, and kind of discussed about through those two archetypes what it is and what is, and then kind of being true to yourself. What do you want to be? Who do you want, et cetera?
So in that blog post, you make an analysis on, for potential outsiders, potential insiders. And as I was going through it, I came up with, I was like, okay, there have been some updates to that, right? For example, the All-In podcast group, you describe them as people who are in conflict at the time. Before David Sachs was in the administration, right? Where they're in conflict and they're sort of insiders, but they also like debate that and have their conflict with that. Updated analysis, are they now insiders?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough, but I can tell you that. So one of the people I talked about in the blog post is Mark Andreessen, who everyone will know of, and Mark kind of was an outsider. Like he grew up in rural Wisconsin and kind of didn't really know anybody when he came to Silicon Valley. And then he quickly kind of got drawn in after he was super successful at a young age, got drawn into the world and got on a bunch of boards and very prestigious boards and married into a very prestigious family, did all these other types of things. And for a while, really, really became like, in some ways, the consummate insider.
Yeah.
And then I think at some point, a few years ago, he decided that actually he wanted to be, because being an insider has huge benefits, but also lack of freedom. You can't really do exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
And he decided that the freedom to think and the freedom to do things was more important than the benefits. I don't know exactly how he made his decision there. And so he, even though, you would think, okay, he's still super successful. He's still, and he still has a lot of insider advantages but I would put him in the outsider category now.
Still?
Yeah. I would say he became an insider and now he's moved, at least from a personality wise, back into the outsider category. Now, maybe like the second, it might be different or something.
Right.
But I think he has evolved kind of back to, whereas like somebody like Peter Thiel always was trying to stay the outsider. If something was drawing him in too much, he would try to move to make sure he would stay as much more. So he was probably much more true to that all the way through. And then other people are different. Now, of course, you still get insider benefits and you still get invited to like cool things.
Right.
And you get, and then, but you have to decide sometimes when you have these benefits, like, well, that comes with some sort of way that you can't say the thing you want to say or do the thing you want to do, et cetera. And then you have to decide at some point, like, if that's worth it.
Do you think that's why Peter Thiel has stayed away from being a proactive part of the government? Whereas a lot of his, affiliates, associates are, a part of the government now, at least this administration.
Well,
is it to maintain that freedom?
Well, I think obviously if you're part of the government, you don't have as much freedom to do things. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't be an outsider. But it's harder to be effective if you work for the government, if you are an outsider. And so I think it is important to know yourself, but also super, super duper successful people that are founders rarely are successful in government. Right? Yeah. The current president being the exception, but kind of like you have to be the president, Right. So it would be very rare to see somebody who could actually translate those skills into. So I think if you were a business person, you worked your way up to the top and you understood how to play the game, you could be successful in government. But if you are a founder, it would be hard unless you were the top dog to be successful.
That's fair. That's fair. There's there's another pair that you didn't discuss at length in the blog post. I'd love your take on Paul Graham versus Sam Altman. Do you think they were outsiders as well?
I would say I don't know. The Sam one's harder to know. But Paul Graham, I think, is definitely an outsider. And I think part of the reason he left YC is to stay the outsider.
Oh, interesting.
And so if he was more, right now, YC is much more of an institution.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And there's only so much outsider you could be if you're running a bigger institution, right? So I think he wanted more of the freedom to do what he wants to do. And that at some point that necessitated him leaving YC as the CEO. Is
he now the chairperson of or on the board?
It's always hard to understand how that works. Yeah.
We don't know. But the chairperson of a company is also an interesting role, and you have that role now at Safegraph. When do you make the decision to take that role, and what does that involve?
I don't know.
What do you know from what you've executed? Having done it.
What I know is you don't know. What in the Safegraph case, there was an extremely talented guy who's been working for Safegraph for a long time, who I thought would do a better job as CEO than me. And so it was it was still a decision I probably made way too late. So he's been CEO for, at this taping about a year. Maybe we should have done that a year before or something. He's done an incredible job. He's a great guy. He's very, very sharp. He works incredible hours. Now, of course, it's hard. You don't always have that person to go do it. So it's certainly hard to make that decision if you don't, like, recruiting a CEO.
That is hard.
Extremely hard, and also often leads to failure.
Yeah.
So in this case, it was a much easier choice because I knew who that person was.
And did spend a few number of years at the company.
Correct. Yeah.
So I guess promoting from within is probably the more.
I think more people should promote within, just in general.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. So I think most people should not hire executives in their companies.
Is it cultural preservation?
No. I think that's helpful potentially, but because obviously people look up to their culture cues, not down.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to hire new people at the entry levels for cultural preservation.
Yeah.
But I think it's very hard to hire talented executives.
Talented and hungry both. Yeah.
Yeah. Like really great people that would want to work for your company. Like, why would they want to work for you?
Yeah.
And so it's much easier to work, again, and kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, it's much easier to promote someone to above their ability in a way, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe surround them with some executive coaches and other types of people. You can rent great executives, but I wouldn't buy the executives.
So how has your role evolved in this chair position a year in now? What do you spend most of your time on?
I mean, we run a holding company where we hold and we start different companies, Safegraph being one of the companies that we run and hold. But there are many, many other companies that we started. In some cases, we own 100% of them. Some cases, we own a much tinier minority of. And we start new companies all the time as well. And so part of what I do all day is kind of help the companies that we started and then start new companies.
The 0 to 1 stage.
0 to 1. Yeah. Okay. On the starting. Yeah. And then of course, also I'm at Flex Capital. We do seed stage investing. So we do quite a lot of seed investing. We're now probably the biggest seed stage investor.
Yeah, 100 checks a year or something, right?
Our goal, that's our goal. We're kind of on pace this year to do about 80 deals this year.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And we write like 300 to 500K checks. So it's relatively small dollar size, but high volume into a lot of different deals. And
is there a thesis for the fund or just?
Thesis is great founders.
That's it.
That's the thesis. Yeah. So it's finding great founders and letting them convince us about where the technology is going. What
insight they have.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, because we're so early, we're investing for 15 years down the road.
Right.
It's very hard to know about the future. And so they are convincing us about the future. Here's where we think the future is. And if we love the founder, we want to be along for the ride.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess like all the spinouts that have come out of Safegraph are part of this holding company now.
Yeah, the spinouts are, and then we start new things.
Right. Yeah. And you start new things. That is super fascinating how it's become an incubator. I didn't realize there was a holding company and that's what you're actively doing.
Yeah, and the holding company is called NQB8 or Incubate. Yeah.
So that's what that is. I was wondering what NQB8 is.
Yeah.
Okay, that explains it. Super interesting.
And the hardest part of any incubator is finding like super talented people to collaborate with.
Is there like no dearth of ideas?
There's always dearth of ideas, right? It's always hard to come up with good ideas too, but it's finding the right person to collaborate with about that particular idea.
Yeah.
It's finding that founder market fit, someone who's also super excited and who then takes their idea and makes it their own idea, et cetera.
The talent hunt is the hardest part.
Yeah, it's really hard to find that kind of key person or people to really take that to the next level.
I was talking to a couple of my friends. One of them ran a deep tech venture studio fund sort of, and one of them at 8VC, and they incubate a lot, right? And I asked them what's the biggest challenge, and there are probably 30, different range of challenges with recruiting. But the number one ended up being, takes 2.5 years to find the executive team, founder, and the founder market fit. That's the hardest part, takes the longest. And after conceiving and proving the idea, which is...
obviously sometimes you have to prove it before you find that person. Sometimes you have to prove it after. So these things are hard. But there's some ideas that I've been working on for many, many years that I've been just waiting for the right person to come along and stuff.
So do you like another mentor of mine used to use this concept of shelving ideas. You start, ideating on something and with the resources you have, and you check for interest. If there's no interest within the group that you're currently working with, you just put it on a shelf and you.
Yeah. I mean, again, like some of the ideas also are not good.
But that too. That too.
But at least once a week, I'm working on some very new thing and spending a lot of time researching it and looking into it. And sometimes quickly I think, okay, this isn't a good idea. Sometimes I'll think, okay, this could be a good idea, but I'm never going to be involved in it. And then sometimes it ends up, sometimes it's all you can think about.
That is an incredible frequency, once a week.
Yeah. I mean, at least some part of that week is spending time thinking about something new. Right. And it could be after 2 hours deciding it's not good.
This brings me to another framework you wrote about. You have very interesting, by the way, blog post I would recommend to the listeners. A very interesting blog post on types of decision makers, micro time decision maker, short time, long time, and big time.
Okay, yeah.
I think I got it right.
Yeah.
Big time you define as the philosophical Peter Thiel types, right, or the Naval types. The long time thinkers you describe as people who are in strategy roles, who take weeks to months to make a decision. Then short time you describe as probably CEOs who have to typically between, or at least that's part of the job, but you have between a few hours or minutes to make decisions. And then there's micro time, which is the management layer. Probably you're making a lot more decisions, or you need very quick reflexes. It could be in the CEO role as well, but you need very quick reflexes. You sort of self-identified into the short time bucket where you're really good at your zone of geniuses, the hours to minutes decision making. But ideation is usually probably more on the long time thinking. Would you consider that you're evolving or have evolved since?
I mean, I think it is different. But I do think, first of all, people should think about where are they best at in a time frame. And so some people make decisions. It's not, some people could be good at all of them. Yeah. But where are you better than others at? Right. If you think of, this kind of like sub-second decision-making, well, these are like really important for most professional athletes. It's really important for, if you're a professional video game player, it's really important for like improv comedy, right?
If you're in the war zone.
Potentially if you're in a war zone, it's really important. Yeah. Right. So if you're being shot at, it's probably quite important, right? Again, kind of like an athlete type of thing, right? And of course, younger people are usually better at sub-second kind of decisions. And the if you look at the actions per minute of a professional game player, like they're usually peak in the low 20s or something. 20s, But so that's an important thing. So I've always been, in that case, like I've always been terrible at sub-second decision making. Right. I've always been bad. Always knew I was bad, even like at a young age. Like how did he know to pass the ball to that guy that quickly? Right. Yeah. I just could never do it. And now if I'm like analyzing game tape or something after a couple hours, I could tell you the exact right person potentially to pass the ball to. Yeah. But the fact that LeBron James could just do it in a few nanoseconds is just an unbelievable skill.
When he's in the arena,
and he literally can analyze the 50 different options immediately and somehow pick like the optimal thing at the optimal rate with the optimal spin. I mean, it's crazy. So you have to understand each different thing on a time scale and understand where you're good at. And then some people are just like super deep thinkers too.
Yeah.
And they're incredible, and and they're great at, I'm really good at making decisions in, like, let's say hours kind of time frame. I can assess it. I don't need days. I don't need paralysis. I don't need committees.
Right.
But I probably don't make the decision in a couple seconds either.
Right.
So everyone is different.
So where would you rank
And I think most CEOs are probably in that place, right?
Yeah.
So.
Most CEOs are probably in that hours to days sort of decision.
Yeah, exactly. I would say almost all successful CEOs are probably in that place.
The micro, very short time, sort of the decision making the athlete makes, you think that can be learned through reps and hours?
Well, I think probably all these things can be learned. Yeah. But there's you still have some sort of, and again, that might be changed. That's changed. But if you kind of do some sort of self-eval when you're 14 years old, you're probably really good at some. You might be good at all of them, but there might be one of them where you're absolutely excellent in. And then it's really okay, there's a certain number of careers that you should be doing based on that.
Have you? I'm guessing you do this with the employees you hire. This process is in what roles they would succeed most in.
I mean, in some ways, I don't. Yeah, we don't have like a test or anything that's out there. But I think it's important that people self-select in.
Right. And
sometimes people will be like, "Oh, I really want to do this role," and then you're like,
"Do you send them the blog post then?"
Yeah, I should. You're like, okay. So I think a lot of people think about themselves a little differently. They're not like doing a full good assessment of their strengths.
Right.
So you have to assess their strengths, and based on your strengths, you should do. That doesn't mean you can't do anything.
Right.
Like you can still dabble in other things and do stuff and whatever. But like I'm never going to be the guy who has the good witty reply to somebody in a debate. Right. That's something where you need to think very, very quickly on your feet. Yeah. That's not an area where I'm very good at. And so probably shouldn't be putting my position where I'm on some sort of TV news debate show or something. Like I'm not going to do as well.
Right. Because then all the best responses are an afterthought before you're going to bed.
Correct.
It feels terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember when I used to be part of a debate club. And are you familiar with Model United Nations?
Yeah.
You're required to be really fast with your responses and be really witty, right? Because you're just modeling these debates where you're going after each other. And that's where I learned. I managed to win some sort of an award, but it was so much against the grain, so much preparation, so much becoming a completely different person to do that. I realized I'm not naturally good at this. This is
Yeah. Again, like people can get okay at all these things and stuff like that. Like I would love to. I've never taken an improv comedy class, so I'd love to do it. I'm confident I would never be great at improv comedy.
Right.
I'm not even funny, so that makes it hard right there. I'm pretty confident, but like maybe I could get to moderately okay. Now the question is, should you do things really at all just to get to okay, or should you focus on things where you're going from good to great? And these are always the harder thing. So it might be fun to take an improv comedy class, but I don't have some sort of harboring ideals that I would be ever great at it.
That's interesting. Maybe on one of our next dinners, we should have as an icebreaker an improv comedy class.
Yeah, I mean, again, funny. These things can be hokey as well. So it's very hard to know.
Where would you rank ideation on this time scale sort of standard that you use?
In some cases, it is quite good to be able to do it in the hours, because you can get a lot done if you say, I'm going to give myself an hour, and you time box it. You actually can do a ton of stuff in that time frame,
right? And
then you can go learn a lot. Yeah. And then you can at the end of it, you can make a decision. What you really don't want to do is spend 4 years on something and then decide it's not good, right?
That's
or something, yeah. And so this is like the PhD or something might be working on. So if you're going to do that, ideally it's going to be good. You want it to be good before you start working on it.
That's fair. That's that's actually a very good point. You want to get to the truth faster than,
Yeah.
And most ideas are probably not good. So
Yeah, exactly. Get rid of them.
another thing, actually, you talk about, was this on the podcast with Ahmad? I don't remember, but you talk about learning more from people who are a step or two below, right? And you like meeting a lot of those people versus, what most people optimize for is, meeting more successful people than you.
Yeah.
Where did that sort of insight come from?
Well, I think sometimes when you're meeting with people who are, above the ladder, you are trying to go in to impress them. And therefore if you want to do a good job, you want to teach them things.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And therefore they might not be teaching you things. Right.
Right.
If you meet with someone too below you, they're going to be trying to impress you. So you're going to learn a lot, and you don't have to impress them because they want to meet with you anyway.
Right.
So you're just generally, that's like a better trade. It seems like I'm going to come out of that meeting learning a lot more than when I go meet with the CEO of General Motors or something. If I go into General Motors, is probably one or two rungs above me on the ladder or something. Like I have to go try to impress her.
Yeah. So you're doing most of the talking and.
Correct.
And that.
Yeah. If you're doing most of the talking, you're not doing most of the learning.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. Okay. That's a great way to put it. So while interviewing Darkesh, that was by the way, a really interesting interview. You mentioned that one of your friends has figured out, while we were talking about conversations, how to only have interesting conversations. I don't know if you remember who that friend is. Can you share what their strategy is?
I mean, I think it's somewhat of an antisocial thing. Right? Most people don't have that many interesting conversations. And so if you are optimizing to have interesting conversations, you have to be willing to get out of social situations a lot. Right.
Yeah.
And so most of us don't have the, for whatever reason, we haven't optimized our life to go do that. So I think you have to be willing to not do the typical things that most people have to do.
Don't go to the happy hour. Don't.
I mean, the even like Thanksgiving with your broader family, you may not be optimizing for having interesting conversations. So you might be optimizing for community. You might be optimizing for other types of things there. So I think there's different levels of optimization that go, but it's hard to always have interesting conversations.
Yeah. Is there a conspiracy theory that you believe in, or more recently?
I believe in a lot of conspiracy theories. Yeah.
What is one that you believed in most recently?
I think there are. I think most times when there is something that becomes popular, that there is a back channel conspiracy to make it popular. Like, I don't think things become popular by accident. And eventually those things might hit the zeitgeist or something. Like we all value gold. But I think at some point there was this cabal of people who are like, we're all going to value gold and gold's really important. And let's start telling people that gold's really valuable.
Right.
And like somehow those people and we don't know who those people are, but somehow those people changed the world. And of course they probably said that because they had a bunch of gold.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think in general, like any type of thing that becomes super popular, there is, again, sometimes there's an accident, but there's often a conspiracy to make it popular.
Bitcoin.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that for sure.
Yeah, that is for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now, that doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah.
Conspiracy doesn't mean bad or something.
It's a way to understand the world.
It's a way to understand the world.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that if there's something that's happening and there's some person or entity that is benefiting from that thing happening, they're involved, even if they want to make it seem like they're not.
Would it be oversimplistic to say follow the money or follow the money trail if you want to figure out the incentives?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard to say. Let's say someone is being nominated for a cabinet position. You want that position, but you didn't get the nomination. Okay.
Right.
Well, it wouldn't make sense, but you want to support your president or something, whatever. Okay. Well, it wouldn't make sense for you to be against the nomination.
Right.
But if somebody else could be against it in a way, right? You're maybe clearly the number 2 or number 3 choice or something. So if that got killed, even though that is a member of your party or something, right?
Right.
So I often think that there's conspiracies that happen. It's just like who benefits from it.
Yeah.
And it's not always who's against it publicly is the one that benefits. They're often not. They could be in cahoots, or they could just be the patsy of the other entity that benefits.
That is true. So you have to dig like probably look 2-3 layers deeper to.
So, and there's some conspiracy going on. Usually, there's some trading. There's some other types of things. Like conspiracies happen all the time.
Yeah.
It is a very common thing, and and so so there's always this thing like there's no conspiracies, like no one could coordinate. It's like that is just not true at all.
I 100% agree.
Now, a lot of the things people say are conspiracies might not be true, and those so there are these things like that are like somewhat preposterous sometimes that people talk about or whatever, but there are conspiracies.
Well, what's the most preposterous thing you've heard recently?
I never know, because sometimes these things are never, you never really. And by the way, I haven't like always gone on the route to disprove it, either, right? Like honestly, I have no idea if like we actually landed on the moon or we faked the moon landing. Like I just believe that we landed on the moon, because it's easier to do that. It just seems to be the simple thing to believe. I haven't gone down the rabbit hole of proving that we landed on the moon. I've never been to the moon. So I just believe that we have, and it's just simple to live life that way. There are plenty of people who don't believe it and think it's a big conspiracy, and so and they might be right, honestly. But I've just never I've never gone like first principles there, and you can't go to first principles on everything because you won't have time to do anything else.
That's
so
fair.
You have to believe the zeitgeist on most things, and every once in a while you can go to first principles on something.
You choose what you want to go first principles on. Yeah, you mentioned that reading fiction early on inspired you, and some of it was, or I think you mentioned the movie The Right Stuff, and
that's nonfiction.
Oh, that's nonfiction.
Yeah, nonfiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that is that about that was about airplanes and
astronauts,
and so that is interesting. Now you brought up the landing on the moon topic, so I wanted to connect the dots. Did that at any given point inspire you to maybe start a hardware company or do something more out there like a moonshot?
Certainly, maybe I will. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, these things
maybe it's one of the weekly ideas popping up.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you have to play in your zone of competence too. So there's certain things that like you're just you would love to do or you'd love to be involved in, but you're just not going to be. You might not be the most successiful person to go. So why are you the one to do it? You have to always be asking that question.
How can you uniquely contribute to this? There's so I hosted Doug Leone for another one of these events that we did not record, sadly. But while doing research, I figured that he asked this question to founders when he's meeting them. He asked them about their siblings and what they admire most about them, because what he's looking for is like whatever they admire most in their siblings, that's probably something they lack in either themselves or something they hope to get better at, and that tells a lot more about them. Do you have any such questions for when you're interviewing, when you're investing?
But I think that's a very interesting question. I think it will tell you a lot about somebody, and I've heard that before. And he's obviously a very, very sharp guy. I'm not sure that it's predictive of anything, though. I actually think it's very interesting and gets you to learn something about somebody, and like, it'd be probably a really good question to ask on like a second date or something. But like, I would really doubt it's predictive of any founders.
So that's what I would think of too.
And again, I don't like say anything bad about Doug Leone. He's a legend. He's amazing. He's like, his track record speaks for itself. He's a way better investor than I am.
We're just evaluating the question on its own.
My guess is he is successful in spite of that question, or maybe
he just likes it.
Or maybe actually it's opposite. Maybe it isn't predictive of anything, but it makes people, they are thinking about themselves, and that means they like him more, and he's more likely to win the deal because he asked the question.
That is probably true.
That's probably more likely. He's probably not picking them because of their answer, but they're picking him because of the question. And that is probably, because he's probably in a lot of competitive deals where like he has to get them to pick him.
Yep.
And so something like that is probably a very good, like introspective, I like this guy. He's asking interesting questions, that type of thing. Again, most founders I think are so successful founders. I don't think there's many commonalities among successful founders.
How we started, not many commonalities.
So I don't know that you would be able to learn that much there.
Oh, interesting. So do you have a favorite question you ask when you're hiring, or?
I don't know what's predictive. And I think when you're hiring or when you're investing in a company early stage like we do, the most important thing is to find, it's kind of like, there's kind of two things you're trying to do. You're trying to weed out the people that are bad, right? And that wouldn't be good fits. And you get better at that over time. And then you're also trying to find this rare 10Xer. And in my entire life, I've only hired a small number of 10Xers. I've only invested in a small number of 10Xers.
Which is most companies, most people, it's...
Sorry?
I think most companies are like that. It's like only a few number of 10Xers.
Yeah, it's extremely rare that a 10Xer will join your company. And I can tell you pretty concretely today that I cannot identify the 10Xer from the good person a priori. So obviously anyone you hire, anyone you invest in, you think is going to be good. You wouldn't hire someone who you think is not good, right? But some small portion of those people turn out to be absolutely outstanding. And when I go back in time, I don't think I could have predicted that person would have been the person who would have been absolutely outstanding. Of course, I hired them, invested in them, but and so I just think these are really, really hard to know, especially from interviews, limited interactions. Some of those I knew right away after working with them, like within a month working with them, that this was like an extraordinarily exceptional person. But in the interview process, now maybe I could have run a better interview process. Maybe there could be other things to do. It's possible.
Do you think an interview process is like a broken way to hire, to invest, to?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to know what else you do. I mean, certainly the interview process is just one piece of it. I mean, resume is very important, right? So people look at resumes, and I think the resume is incredibly important.
Why do you think the resume is important?
I think you learn a lot about somebody from their resume. So it's certainly important. It makes it easier to weed out people, right? And so you can have a pretty high sense, okay, it's extremely high likelihood this person's not going to be successful in this role or in this thing based on their resume. Again, you might be wrong. There's going to be the outlier. So
you're probably looking for their innate sort of qualities or abilities based on the roles they've done previously, right?
Yeah.
Some of them could be transferable skills. Some of them could
not
exactly.
Be it's hard, but it's hard to know. And then there might be other things, like they put something out there, like you see someone posting, they're writing a blog or something, right? Like, well, that's probably pretty interesting. You probably learn about somebody by what they write about. Maybe you can see an interview with them. Maybe they're posting on X, right? So there's lots of other, there's some work product that's out there that might be somewhat public and you can access.
Proof of work,
some sort of proof of work that you can access, GitHub repo, whatever it is that you can access that gives you a sense of what they've done. Obviously, you may have worked with them before, right? But even there, I have hired people who I worked with before who were amazing at my last company, and I worked with them again, and they were not good. Sometimes they just were, maybe they weren't the right fit for that new culture. But sometimes they changed in their own life. Like before they were younger, they were hungry, they were ready. Now they are optimizing for different things.
Yeah.
Or people do change.
Yeah.
I think people are very different.
People do change.
People 10 years ago are very different from today. And it's very, very different
Every
person.
5 years.
You asked me about my high school, that's a completely different person. That is not me.
Right.
This person, me as a 16-year-old is very, very different than me today. It's a complete. I'm like distantly related to that person. It's like it's not even my cousin. It might be like my second cousin or something. Like I'm kind of like somewhat related, same family tree, but like it's not me. It's a very different person. People change.
I agree. People change, and the rate of change is, I mean, depending on how much time you're spending with them, it's hard to tell,
That's right.
Yeah.
When you're with them, it's really hard to say.
Yeah. I was thinking about it. The best determinant for that I've found is there's no way around actually seeing them work. Whether it's founders, it becomes clearer 9 months to 1 year of being in close proximity to seeing them execute.
That's right. And obviously, they're not just going to work with you forever, right? Before you hire them. Right?
Yeah. And same for people. Usually I found, people who are struggling 3 months in and, you're reevaluating your decision. You give them an extra, you give them six months as I found the right amount of time. And some people think it's too long. But that is when, people start actually becoming very productive. And you might not have predicted that this person would have, become at least a 3 or 4xer, right? When they were 3 months into a role, and it's something just changes 6 months in. And
I haven't seen that happen very often, but it has happened.
So it's very hard to tell. Sometimes time is the only predictor. But you're right. In most cases, 2 months.
And again, it might not predict forever. Yes, right. And also people's level of ambition changes over time.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different things that just change for people.
Why do you think people's level of ambition changes?
It changes dramatically. I think because a lot of people get satisfied. So their level of ambition changes because they're actually get satisfied. Or sometimes you think they seem ambitious, but then they have some sort of setback and then they don't need to keep going through the setback.
They're ambitious, but not persistent. And it's hard to tell unless they're met with,
they're really not that ambitious because obviously, so it's hard to understand. So sometimes they actually weren't that ambitious in the first place, but you didn't really realize it. But yeah, there are people like Elon Musk who are just have like a massive, insatiable level of ambition. But a lot of people, they reach their level.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you ask, even if you think of Larry Page, who started Google.
Right.
People,
he wanted to sell for $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, but even whatever. But that's not. But even later, even I mean, the last few years, what is Larry Page doing? Right. I mean, he's obviously a super smart guy, right? And then there's a famous interview and said, "What are you going to do with your $100 billion?" He's like, "I'd probably just give it to Elon." Right? He even realizes he wants to enjoy himself. He has other types of things. I think that's normal. I don't think even someone who's been as successful as him, as smart as him, his level of ambition is capped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though he's one of the richest people in the world.
It's very hard to tell what people's level of ambitions are. Because
it's very hard.
They might say something different, but you don't really know.
Yeah. You start to realize when there's a lot of failures.
Yeah.
And then you could see them if they're plowing through them, if they still want to go through them, et cetera. You start to see it a little bit. But every time you hit a new order magnitude of success, people start dropping off.
Do you think that's a good way of training people just early on, where they're allowed to fail more often, or they're in roles, or early, first 3 months they're in roles where they just fail more often and you can check for persistence?
Well, certainly, I think that's a way for them to grow faster, as we talked about earlier. Yeah. So I think that will help them. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure persistence and ambition are completely linked, because some people are still persistent to reach a certain goal, but then once they've reached that goal, they're satisfied and they don't need to reach the next goal.
Right.
Like some person wants, they want to just have a good life with a white picket fence, and they want to have, make sure that they have a good family And this is like the American dream, right? Yeah. Which is nothing. This is a great ambition. Yeah, great backyard. Yeah. Good. They're happy that and then they reached it, and they don't want anything more, and that is great. Like there's nothing needed there.
I mean, society wouldn't function if we didn't have like a good balance.
Yeah, correct. So it's so a lot of people, they reach a level of ambition and then they stop. Yeah. Now, if someone said, "I'll give you an extra 2x on your salary," they would take it, of course, right? And they still kind of compete in certain things in certain ways and want to get better. But it's different. Like if they're not going to push through the setbacks, they're not going to risk it to do more, et cetera.
It's interesting how human beings are very complex, as you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
Each is very unique, hard to predict. But I'll keep my thesis on trying to identify the archetype.
Yeah, there might be ways to do it. there might be ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also hard to know because every error might have a different type of successful person.
Right.
So you might be predicting for the past. And most predictions are really good at predicting the past. Even predicting the past is incredibly hard to do. So most people are terrible at predicting the past, but like predicting the future is really hard.
On that, we talked about your the predicting the future thing, but like it's been a very fascinating conversation. What are your favorite books?
I like a lot of books, but I tend to read mostly nonfiction, and I think they're books that make you think.
Okay.
But first of all, I think I've read too many books.
Okay.
So I wish I read fewer books in my life.
Why did you say that?
I think a lot of them aren't as valuable. A lot of them are they're just kind of you're just filling time with it. A lot of it I could probably have learned it much quicker. And I still haven't learned that lesson. I'm reading a book right now about William McKinley. Honestly, I really wish I should just stop reading it. Like, I probably could get the Wikipedia article or, whatever. I probably know enough about it,
Would have probably been enough.
Yeah, or just a few other types of things. So, there are just certain books that just are enduring. So one book I love is this book called Generations. And I think it's by Strauss and Howe. I think it was written in the 90s or something. It's really good. It talks about the arc, and I constantly am thinking about that book. So there's books that just stay with you and have like a new way of you thinking about the world,
right,
et cetera. And those books are really good. And those books really kind of change the way you think, or they inspire you to do something. It could be a biography which does inspire you to go do something different.
What did Generations inspire you to go do?
Well, Generations really helped. It didn't inspire me, but it really helped me think about the world in a different way and think about generational conflict in a way that I don't think I'd thought about. I read this book 25 years ago more. And just an incredible book and so I think there's a lot of books like that. Obviously, people are inspired by the Bible, right?
Right.
So there's there's a lot of inspiring stories. There's a lot of things to not do there as well, right? You don't want to be smitten down for doing something, So there's the book of Job is like an incredibly interesting story. So there's so many different stories there in the Bible that I think people that's a classic one that people go to. But there's a lot of different types of books that are out there, and that I think are worth reading. But there's also a lot of books that, if you're a well-read person, and there's a point where I was probably consuming 4 or 5 books a month for many, many years at once. And at that point, it's just too much. You're not spending enough time with it. You're not thinking it through, et cetera.
What are maybe 2 or 3 other books similar to Generations, which you've, which you think you would go reread, which you think about, which have had a profound impact? But
I mean, speaking of Peter Thiel, I think 0 to 1 is just a must-read book. I think everybody should read that book. One of the reasons it's so good is it's so short. right?
Right.
And I think
to the point.
It's very easy. You can read that on a cross-country flight and really grok it and understand it.
Yeah.
It's extremely well written.
Yeah.
Which is we wouldn't expect, right? This is why would you expect something like that? And so the concepts are very easy to understand from it. They're very complicated concepts, but they are explained in a very easy way.
Right. You have to spend time thinking after reading it, or
sure, yeah. I mean, that specific book I think is a must-read book, and I think it's a must-read to reread. I think it's by far the best business book out there.
Right.
And so again, like people wouldn't necessarily expect it.
I think I should reread it. That's
I should reread it too. Actually, now that I'm saying it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great. It's a very interesting. So it's an example of a book which I think is going to be there are anecdotes in there which make it hard to be timeless, but the strategies of thinking about things is kind of like, the people read like The Effective Executive still today or something like that. Like there are some things that are still, that will be timeless 100 years from now. People will be reading it.
The Effective Executive is another timeless, like sort of non.
I mean, I don't know if it still is. So that's I can't remember. I read that book so long ago. But these Andy Grove books and stuff like that. There's probably a lot of anecdotes in the Andy Grove books that are just kind of like so outdated or hard to grok today if you're a 25-year-old or something, right? And my guess is at some point, because there's all these anecdotes in the 0 to 1 book, that might be true 50 years from now or something. But I think it'll still be the timeless book,
right? That
people will read, and it'll be rediscovered in many different languages, many different cultures, and it is such an important book. Another book I love is called Difficult Conversations. Have you ever read that?
No, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's really good. And this is a book I would actually listen to the audio.
Okay.
Right. So it's one of the few books, I think the audio is better than and what it does is it basically has difficult conversations and they play you through them. And the nice thing about the audio is you have different actors having the conversations.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. And they're talking, and it could be, I want to have a raise, or, you're having problems with your spouse, or the neighbor's dog is barking, or, whatever the difficult conversation is. And they kind of play out the conversation, and they play out the conversation in many different ways. One where it goes really bad, one where it can go a little better, and one where it can go even better, right? And so they replay out the conversation all the way through. So here's the scenario, and here's what the conversation is. And that is a audiobook I think is worth re-listening to every few years as well.
Maybe that's the one, we should listen to with our partners. That's
a good one to have with your partner, with your spouse. And I gave it to my wife, before we got married. I've given it to most of the people I've hired over the years. Right. I think it's very helpful to have like those type, it's a good framework for thinking about it. And it's also very short too, which is very nice. So I think like the problem with some of these books is just, they're just too long. The problem with this podcast right now, if anyone got to this point right now, they're probably like, what the heck, So these things are just like, so it's hard. You want to have the information as quick as possible to people.
Right. Do you watch TV shows or?
Oh yeah, I love TV.
What are some of your favorite shows that you've recently seen in the last 5 years, maybe? Is it just me, or is the quality of TV going down? Good, shows, just good shows.
I would say it's not as good as it was. There was a peak. Yeah. And that peak was a while ago, like 20 years ago or something. Yeah.
Yeah. We still keep rewatching shows from a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like The Wire is such a good show. Like, have you seen The Wire?
I have not.
It's so good.
The West Wing I've seen, which is.
Yeah, I haven't seen The West Wing. I haven't. I've seen some episodes, but I've never actually watched the whole series.
It's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. But The Wire is I think one of the best shows of all time.
What's it about?
It's about gangs in Baltimore.
Oh,
and other types of, and lots of other kind of complicated interactions in Baltimore.
What era is this from?
Probably 20 years ago, less than 20 years ago, in kind of like 2000s, kind of 2010 kind of era. but just a very, very well done show on every dimension. Maybe I think there's 4 seasons, 5 seasons or something.
Nice.
And there are certain seasons people think are terrible, but even those seasons I think are amazing.
What are some of those?
There's this one where everyone says, don't watch this one season. It's not worth doing. It's like the middle. I forgot. It's like season 3 or something. And people are like, oh, this is terrible. But even that one I thought was, in fact, I actually loved that particular season too. So
I see.
I just think these things are just like really, it's a really good show. I mean, there's a lot of great shows that are out there. And I think there are shows you want to get lost in, but also shows you can learn about and stuff. I have been watching Severance. I'm 1 season in, and I started watching it and didn't think I watched the first episode and didn't get into it, and then I kind of came back to it.
Yes, same.
And so I would say of the new shows, this is the most like interesting one that's out there.
Number 3.
Sorry?
Number 3 from a mid-era, maybe. We've done 20 years ago, and then we've done most recent, so maybe somewhere in the middle, maybe something from 10 years ago.
Oh, another great show that's out there. There's one that I think probably most of your audience have never seen, which I like. It's called The Honorable Woman.
What's that about?
It's very complicated. It's kind of a spy thriller. And it's about a woman who's in the House of Lords in the UK, and her father was assassinated, and he was an Israeli arms dealer, and it's got the intrigue of MI6 and the Mossad and the CIA, and all in one, and it's kind of a very, very the 1 season only.
Right.
Very good.
These 1 season shows, they get you hooked, and they're probably the ideal amount where they keep, leave you wanting more.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And, if you watch a show, maybe it doesn't make sense because it kind of does, like, it doesn't make sense as much to have a 2nd season or so. They probably could have done it.
Yeah.
But, and then, if you ever see Occupied.
No, what's that about?
It's a Norwegian show. Very good. I'll give you a few of these kind of like a little bit off the rails one.
Yeah.
Occupy is a Norwegian show where the Russians are in cahoots with the EU and they occupy Norway because Norway is going green and it doesn't want to produce enough oil for the EU.
Right.
And so Russia occupies it. And
this sounds very interesting.
And it's fantastic. It's very well done. Again, like a little bit fantastical.
Yeah. But it's still, I think you can learn a lot from it.
Yeah, really good. And then there's a French show called The Bureau. I like spy stuff. So the Bureau is an incredibly well done show about spycraft. It's about the GGSE, which is like their version of the CIA.
Right.
And different operations. Again, a little bit fantastical, doing a few things that
but
probably, like the main character probably should have been killed a few times when he wasn't, right?
I see.
But
a little James Bond like where
a little bit. I mean, it's not as unrealistic as it's not a James Bond or Bourne Identity type of thing. But like he's not going to like win in a fight with people per se. But there are they're different kind of, and then there's all these subplots of different people who are in the unit who are spying, who go undercover. There's one subplot of a woman who goes undercover in Tehran, and she pretends she's a earthquake engineer and stuff like that, but she's actually a spy, and just like the whole subplot about her and being undercover in Iran, how she gets to Iran and what does she do is quite interesting.
I have a whole list, and I'm sure like my listeners have a list now. Most of these shows like they probably might not have heard of because.
Well, that's good. Hopefully these shows will get some more viewership.
Auren, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Coming on the
Thank
show.
you. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, absolutely.